Welcome to the Beauty Outlaw. Well, what up, mate? I'm headed down under today, deep down under in Australia. I'm so excited to head there. Of course, we're headed there via Zoom with two of my favorite doctors. They have started an incredible service for nurses called Fresh Clinics. I am so happy to have them here because their belief system alone to merge doctors and nurses and for patient safety, I love these guys, and I'm glad that they've taken the time. They're a day ahead, and how many hours difference? I don't know, like 18 hours difference. They have taken the time to sit with me today via Zoom, and I'm gonna ask them everything a nurse wants to know about how do we practice in regulations and legislations and follow safety for our patients in the right way. So we hope you guys enjoy this video. I'm gonna head on down under now. I'll see you on the other side. So hi guys, I'm so excited to have you guys here today. I have two of actually, I don't think you guys know this, but I'm very inspired by both of you. I like what you're doing. I didn't actually know about you guys until I met Dr. John D out at in Vegas. And we ran across each other and I found out what you guys were up to. And since then, I've done a deep dive and I love what you guys are about, what your mission statement is. It's patient safety first, followed by regulating and finding a way to make the two come together with safety for nurses that are actually leaders in this industry. Nurses are really injectables, I feel, are the leaders in the industry. There are so many nurses in this business. But I'm gonna let you guys tell me first. We'll start with you, Dr. D. Let's start with your guys', how did you guys get started? How did you become a doctor?
Lovely to see you again, and to your listeners, you're certainly connected to someone that we admire. We met at the AmSpa conference. I was walking out of the Wynn Casino, and this colourful, enthusiastic woman with a big cowboy hat on. And we immediately found that we had a lot in common with regards to how we think the industry should look after patients and how we believe that there is so much growth for everyone out there. It's mostly about making sure that we as clinicians are controlling the way that the industry grows and keeping patients safe. So yes, we're calling in from Australia. John and I are business partners in a business called Fresh Clinics. That's clinics with an S. freshclinics.com if you're interested to look us up. But we're both doctors and met in medical school and together went through the trials and tribulations of being a junior doctor. No matter where you are in the world, it's hard work, it's demanding, it's rewarding. But during that journey, we both recognized that we had a capability to solve problems using technology, and we were drawn to this industry for the great degree of commercial growth that is available in this industry. And we really rapidly found out that nurses are the future of this industry, the entrepreneurial nurse in particular, who looks to take control of their own future, run their own small business, and be in charge of their time and their money. For that to work, those nurses needed medical oversight, but what they didn't want was the old hierarchy of the hospital, where the doctor was, the boss and stood in charge of them. And instead, it was a new paradigm where they're actually driving their own business and achieving their own goals, and we're there to support them. So we've built technology to allow that to happen. And a large part of that support is making sure that the patients are safe and that the nurses are well trained. So that's sort of the brief spiel on it. John?
Yeah, it's really nice to be here. And I met you, Jerry, also in the Wynn Casino, but after you met John D, and Don't have quite as charming of an accent. So I'm from the States originally, from Washington State, but I've been in Australia for about the last 15 years. Um, and when we met, I don't know that you had a cowboy hat on at that point in time, but what I did find was a very like-minded individual, which you don't always find necessarily in this industry, and someone who was really interested in patient safety and positive outcomes for her patients. And it was like this meeting of minds that often is difficult to find. And so it was this, I went away like, man, Jerry's just awesome. Like really cares about the same things that we care about in terms of ensuring that obviously we all want really excellent aesthetic outcomes, but actually fundamentally, John and I consider ourselves doctors first, clinicians first, and that really needs to always come first. And so it was great to meet and to like this meeting of minds. It was really awesome.
It is, because there's so much money in this industry, right? This is a very commercialized industry, and it crosses the bounds of medicine. And I find that we're crossing over by the patient versus client mindset when they're really not clients. They're patients, and we're practicing medicine. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, look, I mean, that's something that I talk about a lot. I think the words that we use matter. And so I insist on calling patients patients. Excuse me. And does that mean that it's, that in the old days of medicine, that it's doctor's orders and this is how it goes? No, but that's true in the rest of medicine today as well, right? There's just not a lot of like doctors or give your patient his or her marching orders and off you go. In fact, that, we work together with our patients to ensure the best health outcomes. And I think that's true here, right? We work together with our patients to ensure the best, aesthetic health outcomes. But uh, remembering that this is medicine and that things can go wrong. And when they do, they can go terribly wrong. And ensuring that we are looking after them to ensure the most positive health outcomes is massively important. So I insist on calling patients patients. We make software, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And the software is specific to this industry, and we make sure that it says patient in there, right? Like it matters. So.
I love that you guys are really forging this area of merging between the provider, the doctor, and the nurse with the software platform. Can you explain how your platform works a little bit? Because here's the exciting thing. You guys are coming to America, and I think you guys are already here in some states. Yes, Texas?
Thanks, Jerry. And we're looking to expand quickly. We think that the service that we provide to entrepreneurial nurse injectors is one that creates a lot of value. In Australia, we started quite simply. It was John and I doing what are known over here as a telehealth consultation, but in some parts of America are a good faith examination or a medical assessment. But we would do that over the phone in a telehealth setting. And the initial construct was pretty simple, a FaceTime call and a submission of some medical notes. But it was insufficient for what we needed, and we recognized that technology was going to play a big part. So we've invested a lot to create what we believe is the best platform for conducting good faith examinations and running your electronic medical record within the cosmetic space. It's dedicated to this industry. It's built deliberately for the workflows of entrepreneurial nurses. We don't build software for big chains. We focus very much on the needs of those small businesses that are trying to grow and succeed. So we have in the States a HIPAA compliant EMR that is connected to inbuilt telehealth consultations. And crucially, we also then provide the clinicians to do those good faith examinations. So baked into the software is an Uber style call list where it's dynamically updated. You don't need to book an appointment. Whenever the patient's in the chair, ready for a treatment, you can make a call, get that authorization on the spot. We also recognize the need for a comprehensive end-to-end practice management suite in this industry. What we found and what has been echoed in the conversations that we've had with people through the industry is that the software that exists has largely been brought from adjacent industries like, gyms, yoga, family practice medicine, and it sometimes works for what we need, but often it's a little bit clunky. We are on the cusp of having an end-to-end solution. We have the EMR as described. We have the telehealth baked into it. We've got a dynamic automated inventory management system that updates you through your phone when you have low stock levels and allows you to see at a glance what's available in your med spa for use. That also ties directly into our store where you can resupply your med spa with everything that you need. And coming soon will be that front of house section with calendar and booking, scheduling, point of sale. All of that connects to make this one unified ecosystem. That means you don't need to have 5, 6, or 7 different software subscriptions to run your practice that don't speak to each other. Everything's integrated, everything talks to each other. You connect to your QuickBooks and maybe your MailChimp, but other than that, you're ready to go. And a big part of what we do then is create business intelligence to feed back into those med spas. And again, it's specific to industry. So we work with clinicians to enable us to present back to the nurses who use our software really great intelligence on how to optimize their business. So what is the ratio of neuromodulator to filler that they're doing, and how long between appointments, and what's a walk-up versus a booked appointment, et cetera, et cetera. That information we think is going to be really valuable to clinics to help them to build and grow. In Australia, we've got about 1,500 to 2,000 clinics that use us. We say clinics, you say med spas.
Wow. That's incredible.
So in the States, we're quite ambitious about our capacity to take on lots of new business and help them to thrive and grow and provide them the support they need.
This is incredible. I have been in the industry since 1987. I've watched this industry grow through its ups and downs before even Botox existed. And I've had to pick and choose these platforms as technology has grown at the expense of a frustrated patient with booking, with a doctor assessment. There's all these areas that are spaced out that cause the entrepreneur or the nurse injector that's owning her own business such frustration because there's so many different avenues that she has to go through. And I've perused your platform and I am highly impressed. I can't wait to be your first customer in California. You are making it so simple, but beyond that, I think what I really, why I've kind of dived into you guys is because you guys have that patient first safety. And I really think your platform will be a safe place eventually for even patients to go to. I don't know if you have that idea yet. I'm sure you do, where a patient can go and find a provider. They're going to trust you guys.
It's, as we've talked, right, patient safety is really important. And one of the unique challenges that the US has in the space is obviously you've got HIPAA, right? And things need to be HIPAA compliant. And so our platform is HIPAA compliant in the US. So it runs on a separate stack from what runs in Australia. And yeah, part of the opportunity that lies ahead of us is similarly to ensure that, and one day the software will also be available to the patient, herself or himself, to be able to ensure that and in fact, we do a lot of this already in Australia in particular, but ensuring that they have appropriate follow-up information, they have appropriate safety information, that they have the details that they may need to get in touch with their injector, with the doctors if anything goes wrong. that the software platform will, will cater to them, that they can go and see in one place the treatments that they've had, and, and educate themselves according to those treatments, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot to come there. Yeah.
It's great. You're not leaving the provider or the nurse, because I assume this platform could be for any aesthetic or injector or med spa. You're not. It's such a space where, as it's growing so fast, there are so many people isolated. And that's what I've seen, is there's the nurse that's isolated by herself, getting into an unwanted situation that she can't get out of and has no idea how to do that. And it's
super important, Jerry. I think you're absolutely right. And many of the nurse entrepreneurs that we speak to have come from the hospital, and they've been in a collegiate environment. They've worked in an emergency room or an ICU. They've been in a collegiate environment with a lot of support and oversight, and suddenly they find themselves quite isolated. I think isolation's the right word. That's both from a business and a social sense. You're a solo entrepreneur. It's pretty lonely, and we provide community and connect people around that. But also, when something goes wrong, your medical director may or may not be available. The person who you called for a GFE may or may not be available.
Or they don't know how to handle the situation because it's Jenny's aunt's uncle's friend that's your medical director. So we have a lot of that.
Perception is that there is a standard in medical care that complicated cases get referred on, but somehow in cosmetics that doesn't seem to be the case. So John manages more complicated complications in Australia than anyone else. We see hundreds of thousands of patients a year through our platform, and the complicated cases will eventually escalate to be managed by John. We also work with a network of complication management providers to allow geographically relevant expertise to be available to people. This is highly specialized stuff. Managing these complications is a skill known by a very small percentage of doctors and advanced nurse practitioners. So is there a way for an injector who's in Houston and gets a complication to connect with a network of experienced professionals to make sure that patient is safe? At the moment, not well enough. But as a network, as a community, as an industry, the competition for patients should stop at the moment that a patient has a compromise. And we as an industry should collaborate to ensure that that patient is safe. That's just medicine. And I think that the commerciality of the industry has impacted patient safety in that way, because potentially business owners don't understand that clinical lens. We're trying to wrestle that back and say, look, compete all you want on Main Street for patients, and we all compete fairly and offer our value as much as we can. But as soon as there's a complication, we should come together and support that patient the best way we can, which we do. And I mean, John can speak to some of the complications that he's managed, but we have worked tirelessly to ensure that when that does happen, and even if it's outside of our network, those patients are looked after.
And I might say too that, I think sometimes there's a perception that, if we use fillers as an example, right, that an occlusion is something that not to be shared, or, it's like it's a fault of your own. And does technique matter? Yes, it does. And, and the better that one is, the safer the safer the techniques that one uses, the lower the likelihood that these things will happen. Yes. But for me, and I manage a lot of occlusions, after the sort of debriefing that I have is like, look, you get to wear this as a badge of honor, right? This is like, it's a numbers game. It doesn't matter who you are. You do enough of these, eventually it's going to happen. And so, as John discussed, right, this is medicine. Medicine is we look after the patient, right? And sure, sometimes medicine's a little bit political, but it really shouldn't be. It should always, regardless of whether you're in cosmetics or elsewhere in medicine, right? Like, we need to put the patient safety first. And so for me, I'm like, look, you get to wear this as a badge of honor. And in fact, like, you've walked away, you survived, the patient is well, and we now get to teach others about what did you learn from this? What did you learn in terms of what you would or wouldn't do in terms of injecting? What did you learn in terms of how we manage this? And the other thing in medicine, right, is that we share our knowledge and we teach each other. I mean, that's just fundamental. And so there's real opportunity there to continue to grow that body of knowledge that we all work off of and share.
I've kind of I'm beating this like a dead horse a lot with the industry, because I personally feel in America that, I know this for a fact, that complications are underreported. And they're not.
I mean, grossly, I would suggest that's true globally, that they are grossly underreported, yes.
And complications happen with any medication, but ignoring it and pretending like it's less than it is not going to help us, like you said, come up with answers to resolve a patient's incident or side effect, or bring other people to the table like yourself that are willing to become a source of a round table of people that can get in there and mitigate and stop it from damage from getting worse. Do you see, okay, so say I have a question for you. I injected my patient and let me see, where did I inject her? Let's see, I just did her lips. Put a little filler in her lips, and I have a complication. And my patient calls me at 1:00 in the morning. And at that point, I'm a new injector. I've never had a complication.
That's a lot of that network that John Delaney is talking about, right? So, regardless, you've got to have a medical director that oversees a clinic. And so we ensure that any of the medical directors that, that you're working with have been trained and are well trained. We also ensure that the expectation is that they refer up, as John discussed, right? Then as an injector, I mean, you can inject 10, 20 years and never see a vascular occlusion, right? And so I sit in meetings with colleagues and we discuss what's the best practice for managing certain things. And the reality is a lot of the time, a lot of those doctors haven't ever managed any of those things. And that's not a fault of theirs. It's just the reality of it's a numbers game and it doesn't come up, right? And so, but for us, right, you've got your medical director as a first port of call, but you've also got a network that we build to ensure that there's always a referral up for someone that does know how to manage these things. And this is, when we started this, and I'm certainly in Australia, I'm the one that manages, the bulk of the really complicated things these days. And there are others, thankfully, we've grown enough that there are others that help. But I said to myself, look, if I ever have to, I'll hop on a plane and to make sure that a patient has, the best outcome that's needed. And that's only happened once. But it came time and I was like, I'm gonna have to do this. And they were just in a position where there really wasn't the support in terms of expertise locally that was needed. And so I did. Now that doesn't scale well, and that's not part of the plan, but I think it's illustrative of the importance that it is to us that patients have positive outcomes. And so, in reality, what happens most of the time is actually most of these things are managed well over telehealth. And those that are not, right, we then refer to like-minded colleagues who are interested in having, ensuring the best outcomes for patients, regardless of where it came from. And so that network and that community that John has briefly spoken about, some of that community is like-minded entrepreneurs and nurses, but some of that community is like-minded clinicians who work together to, are happy to be part of those referral networks. We've got a really great organization started by a couple nurses here in Australia. It's called AMET, Aesthetic Met. And, part of what they have built and they continue to build, and we are massive supporters of, as well as actually a support network of experts around the country that are there when things go wrong that you can refer to, and sometimes I get patients that are referred to me from outside of fresh clinics and through those guys, and it's look, this is about ensuring the best patient outcomes, and so we're always happy to.
Hi, everybody. This episode is sponsored by Pretty Girl Cosmeceuticals. These products are the best. If you're not using them, you need to use them. You can contact JKH Aesthetics anytime, and we will give you a consultation about how to use these amazing products. We have Glow Girl and Ice Drops. These will keep you young, healthy, and glowing every day of the week. And now, back to the episode. Well, we were talking about the wonderful part of word of mouth, and that's really how the heart and soul of a business that grows successfully really grows, is from word of mouth, treating patients, making them happy, watching out, having their best interests, and they will spread the word. And so you're right. It shouldn't have, social media really shouldn't be our way of finding our provider, although it's helpful. It is helpful. In America, it's very important to have that Instagram social media platform.
Yeah, sorry, and I don't want to devalue the role of social media. Obviously, it is incredibly important. I don't think people will succeed or not succeed based on restrictions on what they can say on social media. I think that, there's a adage that I adhere to, which is do what you love and then self-love. I think that if people are passionate about good patient outcomes, passionate about high quality service, that will come through. And part of that high quality service and good patient outcomes is ensuring you're getting the right training, investing in that, investing in your training. Don't just get the training from the pharmaceutical suppliers. Try and find good online mentors that you can follow. There's lots of free content that's put up online. And then if you can find good training organizations, cadaver labs, that sort of stuff, you've got to invest in your education and making sure that then you're the best injector that you can be, and potentially the best in your area. That's going to drive business for you, and you're going to keep yourself busy doing that.
I tell all my new young nurses and PAs, or even physicians that are getting started, find a mentor. That's great money spent, almost better than a weekend course with a group of people. If you can find someone that will let you mentor, or that you can mentor under, you can learn so much. There's so many people out there that are willing to give back and give education to others. We're just one big, amazing community, this community. And I love that we're all coming together, and you guys are giving us a place.
The other truth is that the penetration of toxin filler in the market is still very low. And these are products that work. They work well. I think there's still a remaining stigma or perception in the market that needs to be overcome. But the upside potential is there for everyone. There's enough business for everyone. So one of the big things that we drive in Australia, and perhaps we've helped to pioneer, are community-led events that are very positive, with a lot of support. And just because of the nature of the industry, it's a lot of sister-to-sister support, a lot of female empowerment. That's been so well received. People want to talk about their particular clinic challenges with other people who understand, and there aren't that many people outside of the industry who understand. So getting together for a brunch or a lunch or a dinner with some colleagues in the area and just sharing what it's like. How are you getting new patients? How are you retaining them? What trends are you seeing? That sort of conversation is invaluable. So again, I encourage anyone who's listening to reach out to their local community and try and find a way to connect with people in your area. It doesn't have to be competitive. There is enough out there for everyone. The more we support each other as an industry, the better we're all going to do.
Amen. Well said. Totally agree with that. Okay, so I have a couple wrap-up questions. Now, let me see. Dr. D, you're not a daily injector?
No,
No, you're an ER doc.
My background's in emergency medicine. Yeah, that's right. John H. Is vastly more experienced in cosmetics.
Okay. So, Dr. H, I got a question for you. All right. Do you aspirate?
Ooh, it's like open up a can of worms, Jerry. I do not, and ironically, we just had Sebastian Credifani here in Sydney, in Australia, actually. They sort of paraded him around.
He is everywhere.
Yeah, he's everywhere.
He's amazing.
Lovely to obviously like have known of Sebastian and listened and heard him speak for forever, so it's lovely to meet him. And he put out a study, you know, with his mathematical modeling that looked at, you know, if you're doing the Australian jiggle or whatever you want to call it. In fact, he was like, Australia, you guys have, it's your fault, Australia. This whole idea of like moving your needle, you're the ones that ruined it for everyone. And that, in fact, a lot of that is from Professor Greg Goodman, who you may or may not know of, but widely published and just an excellent dude and has been around for a really long time, based in Melbourne, dermatologist. He's just awesome. But that's a long lead up to the answer is no, I don't. I don't, I'm not against aspirating as such, but the concern for me is that it can give a false sense of security if you have a negative aspirate, that to my mind, you should continue to be moving your needle. And I know that Sebastian would like have a strong argument against that, but I've got a strong argument against his. But you know, the worst, and it's pretty bad occlusions that I've had to manage, and a number of occlusions in the chin that involve the tongue. I think I have 4 that involve the tongue and the gingiva, and it's not easy or fun to manage those. And thankfully, somehow, knock on wood, we've cleared all of those 100%. But it's a heck of a lot of work. Those as an example, it's always a static needle. It's always needle to bone. So needle to bone equals, if you're so unlucky as to have the lumen of that needle be inside of the lumen of an artery, you can get yourself into a whole lot of trouble. And it doesn't take a lot. So one of the tongues, as an example, was, you know, needle to bone, 0.1 of a mil of a bolus, and that included then probably about a quarter of that patient's tongue. And again, in the end, it was fine, but it's a heck of a lot of work. And in fact, some of the gingiva as well. And I was worried the patient was not only going to lose function.
Was it instant? Did they lose color in their tongue instantly, or was
it was pretty quick. Not the gingiva wasn't that obvious. The tongue, and the patient also had some topical anesthetic that they'd gotten in their mouth, and so it wasn't totally clear at that time because they're like, oh, look, the left side of my tongue feels a little bit funny, but they'd gotten some, you know, like you get some topical in your mouth and your tongue feels a bit funny when that happens. And so in that case, it was not instantly obvious what was going on. In others, another tongue, really bad one, it was very instant. So it was like half the tongue was totally occluded and exquisitely painful. It was pretty rough. But again, in the end, the patient was fine. And then like wanted filler 3 days later, which is just insane. It's like, when can I get more filler? Just hold on.
cleared it up?
Yeah, but I think so. So for me, I don't aspirate. I'm not because uh, I think my concern is that it can give a false sense of security, and that your techniques should you just shouldn't be having a static needle. Again, Sebastian's got, you know, strong opinion against that. But every single really bad occlusion I've ever managed has been static needle to bone.
Wow. So, the patient with the complication of the tongue, did they have to do hyperbaric as well? And was that multiple days of?
So in fact, all 4 of them, no hyperbaric therapy. But again, we have hyaluronidase that comes in 1,500 units. And so, you know, we're talking about, well, it depends on which one you talk about. But the worst one, I think the first day we ended up using north of 10,000 units of hyaluronidase. So just in the tongue, right? Um,
Wow.
and again, really positive outcome for the patient in all of those cases. But it's a heck of a lot of work, and it's pretty unpleasant.
Do you flood? I take it you flood the area. Do you do ultrasound? Do you use ultrasound?
So sometimes ultrasound can be useful. It's pretty difficult to get a probe into the back of, the base of someone's tongue. So I have even, called up interventional radiology friends, and they're like, I'll be honest, it's not going to be much help here. So there's definitely a place for ultrasound. As of yet, I'm not sure that the base of the tongue is an area where it's particularly useful.
So where was the patient injected? Did you say?
The chin. Every single tongue
was
has
the
been the
chin.
chin.
So
Yep, sometimes midline, sometimes off to one side or the other.
So not only did you try to, I mean, typically I would think you would try to flood the area of the chin with.
I mean, in each of the cases, there is some tissue compromise in the chin submental region as well. The gingiva, and then how do you get in there is a bit tricky, and then the tongue. So yes, you need to treat those areas. Flooding is an interesting term. In my mind, it makes me think like just huge volumes, and it's huge volumes of hyaluronidase that you want to use, not necessarily huge volumes of fluid, right? And so we're again, one difference that doesn't apply so much to the US right now is that we've got these hyaluronidase vials coming 1,500 units, and so in a typical dissolving for aesthetic reasons, we might do a 10 ml dilution of that 1,500 units. Well, in a couple of tongues, we're doing 1,500 units in one ml of 1% lidocaine, right? So you're like really concentrated, and you're trying to target very specific areas. So flooding in terms of units, yes, but not necessarily. If you put too much fluid in there, it can make it difficult to manage things.
This is why we need more people like you that can actually educate more of us in the industry on how to get out of situations, or at least initiate the start of it. I know a lot of nurses and providers are actually very fearful of using their Hylenex, which we call it here. They're very fearful. They will try everything to pick up the phone and find someone else to help them out due to the fact they've never had to get themselves out of it before.
Yeah, and that's another lesson from emergency medicine is sometimes it doesn't matter how much you don't want something to be what it is what it is. So the quicker you can recognize it, the better the outcomes are. And often with occlusions, I mean, I'm John's just trying to keep the calls going with our work, but often with occlusions, one of the things John's often said is you've got time. With a retinal artery occlusion, you don't have time, but if you've got an occlusion on a lip, you've got time. There is no need for panic. There is time to have a think about it. Get your Hylenex in order. Ensure you've got appropriate medical advice. It's much better off to recognize and treat early than wait for 2 or 3 days when you've got some necrotic tissue, some sloughing. Then things are going to be more difficult to manage. So the advocacy here is fear not, recognize early, and ensure that you're connected to a network which can support you medically. Be that us, be that someone else. Don't be out there, flapping in the wind when you need some support. Your medical director is nowhere to be found because they're not. They're there in name only. It's no good for anyone. It's no good for you. It's no good for the industry. It's certainly not good for the patient. So that would be the sort of closing advice I would have on that is make sure you've got that support around you. Make sure those people know what they're talking about, and make sure you've got the tools on hand to recognize and resolve if something does go wrong, because it's certainly resolvable if you recognize it early.
That's awesome. See, I'm all about finding your people and your team and your crew and your round table. And I'm just so proud of you guys. I think, what was 4 or 5 years ago that you guys started this, or is it longer?
Yeah,
No,
about
that's
that.
right.
Yeah.
You guys
So we're doing our best. we're like I said at the start, we're in Texas at the moment, freshclinics.com. If you're interested, we will be in other states just as soon as we can. I am finding out the hard way about the bureaucratic nature of the US and all the states and all the differences, but it's cool. We're not afraid of a challenge, and what we like to do is set our business up so that we take on a lot of the compliance paperwork burden for nurses, nurse entrepreneurs. So our software can do all that for you, and you just focus on running your clinic, running your business, serving your patients. And then if something does go wrong, you've got that backup.
So it's freshclinic.us and also clinics with an S. I'm going to have it on the podcast. I'm going to have it on the podcast at the bottom. I'm going to put your guys' personal number. No, just kidding.
And, Instagram is, I think, at fresh.clinics. So we're here for the long haul. We see the potential. We love this industry. We love being involved and supporting nurse entrepreneurs and seeing people change their lives for the better. That's a big part of what gets us motivated, and a big part of our why is supporting cosmetic entrepreneurs. So please reach out. We'd be very happy to talk about anything that you feel we can do to help you.
Awesome. And when you guys come to California, I'd love to have you guys back on and help walk nurses through how to set this up in California.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a short plane ride from here to West Coast, so we're over often. We'll connect with you next time we're in Newport Beach.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys, and I'm going to talk to you sooner than later. And shout out to Codafonta too. We mentioned him, so he's everywhere.
We'll have a chat to him soon and tell him to connect. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. Thanks for having us on. We really love. As we said at the start, there's a good connection here around patient safety, and so we'll keep talking.
We'll keep it up. You guys take care. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot. Thanks everyone.
Jerry.
Bye, guys.